Good afternoon. It's indeed a huge pleasure to be here, and I've listened to the last hour. And sometimes people ask, well, what do you need to get lucky? It's three things. It's always three things. First, you have to take risk. Instead of watching your smartphone in a meeting, you go to someone and say, I'm Koen. I'm going to Zurich. Where do you go? I dare to take the risk to talk to you. Maybe you're my next boss. Super simple. Rule number 2, I'm applying for a job with you, and you don't hire me. But I sent you a thank you letter. You will never forget that. Maybe in the future you might need me. And the third thing is coming to your point, sharing. Very often people know something, they keep it for themselves. Share it. It makes you super powerful. And that's what I'm going to try to do. Share a number of kind of insights we gained the last few years in trying to build a dream. I have one dream. To build a world in which I no longer, in which you no longer, in which your kids no longer need to get sick. And I think we can try to co-create that together. By starting here. This came from a festival in Cardiff in Wales, before I die. And people were asked, what do you want to do before you die? 3 things, always. The first thing people always said, well, I want to leave some legacy. I want to leave a name, a company, a child. And look to this one. This is pretty cool. This is designed from Britain. This is, instead of burying me in a coffin, you bury me in a pot. And basically, I'm the seed for the next generation. And I try to build a first of buried people. It's putting it forward. It's planting a seed. This is number 2. No one wants to die alone. Never. You want to be part of a community. In Hawaii, being homelessness is a disease. There is a prescription to get you off the street and to get you a roof above your head. Absolutely basic. This is one of the few startups coming out of Google, which hardly anyone has heard of. It's called CityBlock. And what they do, they look to city blocks, and they try to build a community of people sticking together and putting it forward, sharing what helped them to live a healthy and happy life. So let's take that forward. This is a movie you might have seen. It's WALL-E. And this movie predicts or paints a future where this is the experience. We get diabetic, in a sense, and we watch screens, and there's computers or robots which come to us and basically fill the soda. So you could argue, why not? Because this could be a way forward, especially if we realize that we're currently able to start printing with 3D printers organs. We can make kidneys. And one of the things which happens when I get diabetic at the end, I get blind and my kidneys start to fail. So you could argue, well, live that life. We repair it. It's like a car gets broken and we get through it. Yeah? The same with this. By the way, this is a hospital in Melbourne, which is the first hospital which has a biofabrication unit. They print organs in the clinic. Yeah? Now thinking about, well, that home thing. If you ask around worldwide, where do you want to die? Everybody wants to die, well, wants to stay as long as possible at home. Except in Japan. Japan is the most robotized country on the planet. And in Japan, people say, well, it's okay when we die in the hospital. Because we have things like RoboBear. This bear is my nurse. And this bear can take me out of the bed, put me in the bath, put me in a chair, and be my partner. There is not enough doctors, not enough nurses to take care of me. In Japan, I start to be able to deal with tech enabling my life. But that's just Japan, because look at this one. This is the only clinic on the planet which looks like every clinic from the outside. But from the inside, it's different. There is not one single bed. There is not one single patient in the clinic. Every patient is monitored at home with technology, BT-powered, where basically I trust as a physician that if I can monitor something from my patient, I can help him without him coming to my hospital and basically offering the very same services I need basically in the hospital. And think that through. When I get 85 years old, one of the biggest issues I have is that I forget to drink in time. It's hard to imagine, but when you're 85 years old, your brain forgets to drink. So one of the projects we did with a big team in Japan, we made a patch a patch which sticks to my 85-year-old skin and which measures dehydration. Good? Not good enough. If I forget to drink, well, how can I interpret the patch? So we added a layer of electronics. And basically, we programmed the patch via the IoT to communicate with my TV. Being 85 years old, I watch quite a lot of TV. And every 3 hours, my TV now tells, Koen, go drink. That's something I cannot neglect. I've created health. I haven't prevented dehydration. I have it created by default. Yeah? This is the deal we have with a bottle maker in front, Vitello. And the caps on the cup, on the bottle, can be 3D printed. And we put a little tiny flag in it. And we have the bottle here sitting on my table, and ploops, a flag comes out. I know I have to drink. That's something I still manage to do. Invisibly, I've combined technology to change behavior. And this is something we test not in Europe, we're not there yet, but in Japan. We fly in a drone, and on the drone is a glass of water. That's not to neglect. That's creating health by default. And that's what I'm going to try to take you through. Very often, we see that you're fantastic in thinking about the future, but based on what you've been doing so far, you add something incrementally. And there's not a lot of people who are trained to think from an empty page. That's very hard, to think from an empty page. And nevertheless, that's sometimes what you have to do. Look to this slide. Who are you? I don't even have to know who you are. But I think you are the guy at the left. You're best in class in what you do. That's how you're trained. You're trained to be good in what you do. But try to be the right one, who's even blind and looks to something, well, he or she doesn't see yet, but which he or she might hope you can generate. That's what we're going to try to do. And it's tough. Let me explain why it's tough. Who sleeps 4 days a week in the same bed? With the same partner? No, I don't know, no. You do me a favor. Tonight, you go to sleep 15 minutes earlier than your partner. Switch off the light, but you've taken the other side of the bed. Your partner will come in and will say, can you please move? And now you're saying, I'm innovating. Your partner will tell once more, don't be stupid, can you please move? And then you're telling, I'm innovating, I've learned that at the Disruption Innovation Summit at BT. I mean, they never ever send you again to such a summit. Yeah? It's tough. And I think I haven't heard the stories this morning, but the reason why it's tough is this. 9,000 data points, big data from football matches, penalties, where people have looked to a football player who has to play a ball in a 7-meter wide goal, kicking the ball from, I think, 9 meters distance, while there is a goalkeeper standing in the middle. How hard can it be? In 98% of cases, big data, 9,000 cases, the goalkeeper jumps to the left or jumps to the right. In 99% of cases, the soccer player plays the ball to the left or the right, which is stupid, because there is no keeper, normally. And why is it not happening? Because there's a 1% chance that I play the ball straight and you're there, and my reputation is gone forever. That's why innovation is hard. It's about not failure, it's about potentially losing reputation. And that's why I have good news as well, because innovation is not that hard. Innovation is doing what one of your superb artists, he's one of my favorites, Barksy, recently wrote. He took a quote from Picasso, and he made it his quote. And he said, well, bad artists, they imitate. The real good ones, they steal. I think you should steal more. Yeah? I did that as well. Look to this. I'm trained as a molecular oncologist, seeing patients, cancer patients, end-stage patients, ready to die. Till I went to China for the first time and learned that in some parts of the country, 2,200 years ago, the doctor got paid as long as people in the village remained healthy. How cool was that? Once you got sick, you not even had to pay. I cannot imagine something cooler than that, ever. Towards outcome-based medicine, that's the max you can reach. Now, to make one thing clear, we're all going to die. Dying is the best invention of nature, still. Dying makes you strive. If we wouldn't die, you could kind of do the things you want to do today, tomorrow. Never do that. Do it today. Yeah? But let me try to illustrate that. Imagine I sell you a watch, which tells you the number of days you still have to live. Who wants that? No one. But imagine I sell you this one. A watch where you can do something in your environment, in your lifestyle, to prevent the number going down, to stop the number, or even going up. Everybody. The day before you die, you still want to be relatively healthy. That's what you want to sign up for. Agree? Okay. So what is a big idea? We're going to die young, as late as possible. We're going to die young, as late as possible. Let's try to build that word together. This company didn't die, well, young. You know what happened here? Huh? It's because, why did it happen? Always people say, well, it's because Amazon came there. Well, partially true. This is Amazon 2018. Bookstores, physical bookstores. If you look to the Amazon bookstores, well, it's the experience with the digital interface of having something which tells what you normally read on the website, now physically in front of each book which is front-facing. Only a limited amount of books. If a book is out of order, we go and drink a coffee and they print the book. It's an experience. That is what digital is about. It's building experiences. It's removing friction completely. Rule number one is, if you don't want to disrupt, and indeed I agree with one of the first former speakers, I don't like to disrupt, but I like something else. That is to delight. And delight is the ultimate experience, closest to magic, which is still real. What I'm going to try to take you through is building a world based on delight, in which I no longer need to get sick, and where removing friction is the first thing we're going to do. Okay? This is not perfect yet. But this was the first acquisition by Amazon, when they had announced that they were moving into healthcare. They bought a small company coming from a hackathon in MIT called PillPack. And PillPack sells you, no, they don't sell. Well, they bring you a small package at home at 8 o'clock with all the pills you need to take at 8 o'clock. And at 1 o'clock they do the same. They bring you all the pills at home, physically, via lift, to get you all the drugs at 1 o'clock, and so on. So I don't have to think about taking my drugs myself. A community takes care for that. And I have a way to socially interact with the guy who's coming to me. Yeah? Which is one go of doing it. There is also a technical part of doing it. When I get old, there's a number of things which are hard. These are the first pills, which do contain a very tiny radio sensor in the pill. I swallow the pill, I digest the pill. When the pill comes in my stomach acid, it releases a radio wire, which sends a message to a patch on my skin, and the patch sends a message to my dad or my son that he took his medication or didn't. It's completely automated. I don't have to think any longer. It's basically creating health by default. And that is the first take-home message. One you have heard probably already 16 times today. The world is not about digital. The world is not about technology. The world is about building new experiences. Because remember, that is what people wanted to have before they die. 1, leaving a legacy. 2, being part of the community. And 3, I didn't tell you that yet, people never ever regretted the things they had done. They regretted the experiences they hadn't had. And that's a very powerful way for every business. Because I hope after today, you're no longer selling products. Maybe you're no longer selling services. But ask yourself, what if we sell delight? How would that look like? Yeah? And that is why I very often not advise to do this. Don't hire a chief digital officer. I once explained that to a pharma company which had just hired the chief digital officer. And he got the point, yeah? Because I added something to that. Because if you don't have to hire a chief digital, maybe you have to hire something else. This one. This is my birthday present wish list. And in yellow, if you give me something on my wish list, I'm happy. But if you give me something I even didn't realize I could get, That's in the green part. I'm super happy. An unknown unknown, something I didn't realize could be done, could be made, could be sold, could be whatever, that is delight. So what are you unknown unknowns you can bring to me as a patient, to me as a customer, to me as a father, to me as a child, knowing that 7% of companies think that they really reach, well, customer satisfaction. That's a fantastic opportunity to get it better. Okay, so how can I make it more clear now? I'm 65 years old. What is the biggest challenge I have when I go to a hospital? Who will take care for my dog? We have the first hospitals in Belgium now where we install the kennel. I take my dog to the hospital. 1. 2, the taxi comes and gets me. Lyft comes and gets me to the hospital. That's removing friction number 2. Number 3, waiting an hour in a hospital, I mean, it gets crazy. We hire music bands and they come play music. And the hour feels like 10 minutes. And at the end, we have to put someone on a Baxter. If the guy is 85 years old, while he's on the Infuse, we learn him to WhatsApp or Snapchat. He comes back home, he has a new experience to share with his grandchildren. The experience to go to that hospital is fantastic, really fantastic. And if it's a child, I have to put on an Infuse. Around the Infuse, I have a Batman or a Superman casket, and I sell superpower. Same product, different design. Delightful. I look forward to the next one where I get to the Infuse. And therefore, if it's so important that work seems to define part of who we are, the very first thing you ask when you meet someone is not what is your favorite whatever, or what is something you haven't told someone before. It's where do you work? So make sure that if work is that relevant, that you don't do things which become obsolete. I think delight will never become obsolete. And that makes it a very powerful way to look to that future. I guess this company, well, is a known company, right? Tesla. You know what the CEO of Tesla did a few years ago? He made all his IP open source. So everybody can use IP of Tesla to make electric cars. Why did he do that? Sorry?
Everyone starts copying.
For sure, sharing, yeah. Other reasons? He was building this, the biggest battery factory on the planet, in Nevada. The more electric cars my competitors start to build, the more batteries I sell. My question to you is, what are your batteries? That helps you to think forward. The car is a commodity. Something added to the car is no longer a commodity. And that's what I'm going to really take you through. Yeah? If I look to the real reason why we have lost that Chinese model of being healthy, this is the explanation. If you send a package from here in London to Berlin with FedEx or TNT or UPS, you go to a website and you can trace that package every 5 minutes, yeah? Which you find normal. My average patient is 8,700 hours a year by himself, not linked to the healthcare system. So a FedEx package is better off than my patient. That's not normal. And that is what you can change by introducing what I call guardian angels. I like the word, guardian angels. Yeah? And I think there's two guardian angels. And I'm going to show you a few examples. Yeah? Starting with one guardian angel where I fully realize it's very far away from your daily clinical practice experience, things you can put in your hands. But I think I should start with this because this is the biggest innovation or the biggest new thing which will enter your world in the next few months and years. And it's the revolution which stands on the shoulders of the digital one. It's the biological one. It's the one in which we for the first time are going to understand who you are. What the biggest present is you ever got from your parents, which is your biological code, your genome, your DNA, which defines, for a big deal, who you are. And let me try to illustrate that. The code is 3 billion digits, 3 billion. 3 billion is 10 times the Encyclopedia Britannica, to put that in perspective. Yeah? For 99.9%, we are all identical. 2 eyes, 10 fingers, 2 lungs. The 0.1% makes us different. And we differ only 2% from monkeys. Some people a little bit less. But that's the kind of the starting place. Yeah? Now, have you ever seen the picture at the left? Hallmark picture of the digital revolution. Well, as an intro. You know what that is? Sorry? Yeah, close. It's a hard disk. IBM 1954. It required a plane to get transported. The hard disk in your smartphone is 1 billion times smaller, cheaper, less expensive, more powerful. Yeah? Till a few years ago, that was the fastest technological development we've ever seen on our planet. Human-made, no longer so. The fastest technological development ever developed by man is our ability to identify the 3 billion digits which make you unique, no longer for $3 billion in 10 years' time. That's how we got it for the first time, early 2000. But now we can do it in less than 3 hours for just a few 100 pounds. Here, on the fly, I can generate your genome so you can get it when you leave in 3 hours. That will be the biggest revolution you will basically be part of. Let me try to illustrate that. By the way, I can't go back. You have one really leading company here in Oxford called Oxford Nanopore, which is developing a very small, tiny device, which is half the size of this, which I can use in my practice hospital here to get your genome analyzed. Yeah? Watch that company called Oxford Nanopore. I used that company for one thing a few months ago. This was my father at the left, who had a double infection of the lungs. Classical thing you see in the houses you take care for. The guy was ready to die because the standard practice is to take some liquid out of the lungs, grow it on a plate, hope that some bacteria grow, and based on which bacterium grows, to decide which antibiotic to give. And nothing was growing. Till we took a sample out of the lungs and sequenced every bacterium with this tiny device in 3 hours. And we got the right antibiotic. That's from 3 days to die to 3 hours to treat. That's better. Maybe that's not disruption, but that's a big step forward. But you could argue the guy still got sick in the first place. Eh? I haven't made my point yet. Let me try to make it better. A few years ago, the state of Hawaii sues 2 of the biggest pharma companies because they bring a blood thinner to the market in Hawaii, just like they do in the rest of North America. But people in Hawaii, they have some descendants coming from Southeast Asia. They have 3 digits out of the 3 billion, which make that they need more drug because they metabolize the blood thinner faster. So they need a higher dose, and they won. If I have you in my ER in consciousness and I have to give you a blood thinner, there's a 6% chance that you don't leave the ER, that you're dead, because I don't do it right. It's absolutely crazy that we don't start to use that basic knowledge in defining what might happen with us. And by the way, how to solve these things? This is the first 3D printed drug, which comes out of my printer next to my computer and prints the exact amount of drug I need based on my metabolism. The first time I've shown this to a pharma company, they sent 10 people home because they were not aware that this was in development. But I still haven't made my point. By the way, I get blind myself. I got my genome sequenced as well. That's my job. Yeah? And I cannot do something about it yet, except for one thing. Knowing that it might happen once helped me to change one thing in what I eat. I take one supplement now, which tries to delay the degradation of the back of my eye. But I think you now start to think, well, wow, that's pretty scary. Do I even want to know that something like this might happen? Yeah? So let me ask you that question. I haven't told a lot, I know. But based on what I've told so far, who wants to know his or her genome? 1 in 3, roughly. Interesting. Normally, it's 1 in 5 to 1 in 4. It seems to be a little bit more. Very often, if I ask why not, this is the reason. Angelina. Angelina, who lost her mom to ovarian cancer, did a very tiny analysis of her genome, was predisposed to eventually get breast or ovarian cancer, and decided to remove her 2 breasts. If I ask my 22-year-old students, do you want to know? 1 in 5 only says yes, because the other 4 in 5 say, I don't want to have to make that decision. Till I show this. This is the first bra, which is in clinical development, which contains at the inside of the cup a tiny sensor, which sits on my breast, well, on Angelina's breast, and only if a tumor starts to grow, the heat generated by the tumor is captured by the bra. And then I have to decide what to do. Maybe it never happens. Luckily, I still have my 2 breasts. And if it happens, maybe I'm 55. And basically, I got my children out of the house. It's less of a worry. Technology changed behavior. A bra by Victoria's Secret powered by BT. That kind of thinking. Yeah? The same for this one. In my country, the last year and a half, we lost 3 B-player soccer players, 17, 18, 21, because their heart stopped beating while playing soccer. It's absolutely crazy that that still happens, because we know which genes do predispose to that. Do we then have to tell, well, stop playing soccer? No. We can simply do a small surgery, put a small machine on the heart, and when my heart stops beating, the machine turns on and life goes on. I don't want to make the distinction between losing my 18-year-old child versus a few £100 to do this an entire genome analysis and a small surgery. It becomes ethically unacceptable that your grandchildren will be born without their genome. And you have a fantastic NHS program here in the country. That's just the starting point. Look to this. Thinking about that cardio thing, that heart thing. If I'm sent home by my cardiologist, you know what he does? He sends me home with an appointment the 1st of December. I want to be sent home with this cardiologist, which sent me home with a casket around my smartphone, this one, which allows me to put my fingers 10 seconds on the smartphone. It measures my complete heart function, stores it in the cloud, compares against baseline, and when something is off baseline, my nurse calls me and says, Koen, we're not going to wait till the 1st of December. I want to see you next week. We're going to tweak something. Which cardiologist do you like? It's not a hard one, huh? And that's why going into a world where you start to link to who you are starts to become more relevant. Now I hear you think, not convincing. Because I guess in this audience, no one or hardly anyone has his or her genome yet. So let's park that for a second. Because my health is partially what I got from my parents, plus 2, my lifestyle, and where I live, my environment. Yeah? Let's not play with genomes yet. But playing with the other things, more acceptable, I would guess. By the way, do you know what the best indicator is for how old you will get?
Parents' age and death.
It's the age your parents will have when they die and your postal code. Your postal code tells something about your social status. In this audience, I don't have to explain it, but that's a pretty powerful insight. That is the basic knowledge we currently have. So we can get it better. And let's try to make it better. Look to this. A few years ago, we see coming out of the fitness kind of environment in Southeast the States, an entire movement of quantified self coming to, well, a place near you, where you can start to buy gadgets. Gadgets which measure things like the number of steps you take. Or gadgets, which are no longer gadgets, like the ones you see here, where every single measurement your doctor currently performs on you in his practice, you will be able to execute yourself at home 2 years from now. Any measurement, believe me. This is the pap smear. I don't want you to do pap smear, but you can, if you like. Yeah? So where is it bringing to me? If you would have someone in the family or in your environment who sometimes has issues with migraine, with headaches, do him or her a favor. Subscribe this app tonight, Migraine Buddy. And Migraine Buddy is the following. It's an app where you indicate where the headache starts. You press on the screen, it starts here at this part of my head. And you collect You decide what you collect, how much you have been physically exercising, how much you have been sleeping, how much cups of coffee you've been drinking, and so on. You have an emoticon saying, well, that's how I felt today. After 2 weeks, this thing told me, Koen, your headaches always start on Monday. If you come back from London on Friday, on Saturday, sleep longer than till 8:30, drink more than 6 coffees, don't drink 1.5 liters of water, and on Sunday, don't do 6,000 steps. No one ever told me that. That's delight. A super simple algorithm combining a number of parameters out of my daily life all of a sudden made a huge difference. And where does that bring us? We have a number of issues coming to us. Diabetes is one. It's not the biggest one. There's something bigger. And a few years ago, we sent 6,000 diabetic patients home with one drug and one thing very basic. You know what? A super simple step counter. How basic can it be? Huh? And we divided the group in 2 groups, 3,000, 3,000. The 3,000 people, which did an extra 2,000 steps a day, were 2 years later free from extra worsening of the disease, or they got cured by moving. This was the first super insightful, perfect paper showing that exercise is one of the best drugs we can sell. We now have evidence, just recently, that motivating people to do 150 minutes of weekly exercise leads to 35% less chance that you die prematurely. Do you recall the watch which I tried to sell you? Rule number 1, move a little bit. And then here you think, yeah, sure, we know that. But how to instill that? And that's the hard thing. How do you change behavior? This could be one option. This is a wristband which gives you an electric shock if you don't move enough. Maybe over the top. But in times of 50 shades of grey, there is a market for that, really. Yeah. This is better. This is Nike in Manhattan. Nike gives me a free Nike product if I can prove that for a number of weeks I've been exercising X thousand of steps, measured by a step counter. This is the Alpha Bank coming from Russia, sits in Amsterdam now, comes probably to your place as well. The Alpha Bank pays me a higher interest rate on my bank account if I do 10,000 steps a day. That's not altruism, that's egoism. Because I live longer and remain a client for longer if I do that. So how do I remain your client longer? You start to see my point, huh? You start to live, let me live longer. This is Netflix. How cool is that? If my wife tells me you should exercise more, oh, I hate that. But now I can pick my favorite character out of Netflix, and he's my coach. And I can watch already the next episode of whatever if I first prove that I have been exercising. Or I cannot. That works big time. Because you're the first with the experience to have seen the 7th episode of Orange is the New Black. This one is a cool one as well. This one initially was a joke at the Sochi Olympics. When I could move 30 times through my knees within 2 minutes, I got a free ride on the metro, on the tube. This is Mexico 2018. Every train station in Mexico is installing the same machines. I drive for free on the tube if I first exercise. The state pays me to remain healthy because it's way too expensive to get sick. You start to see my point, eh? In Dubai, I get 1 gram of gold for every 2 kilograms I lose via exercise. And it's not just that part, because if you think about the future, this is Roberts University. It's the first university where it's mandatory that I do 10,000 steps as a student. A kind of a fresh mind in a fresh body, that kind of thinking. And this is really recent, really cool. We have the first data. It's early, but that people who do these 10,000 steps, they do kind of a number of steps, and that little amount of steps increases a little bit the amount of blood which I send to my brain and keeps me more creative, if you like. Yeah? By the way, do you know what the most creative age is for men? Yeah, and women as well, for mankind? Someone has a guess? Come on. 35. Lower, higher?
52.
It's 48. That's the most creative age of us. You know where it comes from? People have been looking to the Nobel Prize, changing IDs, not to the time you get the prize, when you're 65 or dead, but to the time that you did the real invention, 48. And you know what that is? I need to reach 48. I need to get gray hair before I start to see the dots to connect. If you look to the Facebooks or the Googles, they're the young talent. Yeah, okay. The guy was 21 or 22. You know when they really became big? When Schmidt came on board at Google, or when Marissa Mayer came on board at Facebook. You need gray hair. Maybe Marissa has no gray hair, but you see my point. You need to be able to have seen something in your life to connect the dots, to see that light. Well, what is missing here? Street lights, yeah. If I tell my patient you should exercise more, that will never work if this turns out to be the case, if the lights in her street are broken. So I should have that real-world data point to help my patient. I should be able to tell the community, please fix the lights in my patient's street. That is future healthcare. That's connecting dots across different domains to start seeing new links. And let me give you an example about a next step beyond taking steps. Because you might say, well, you make it way too simple, Mr. Kas, because it's about more than steps I take. It's about what I eat as well. This one is an interesting one. 20 years ago, I was spending some time with a number of colleagues, and we were writing a paper on what is the best diet we can advise to people to remain healthy as long as possible. And now you're going to say, well, sure, we know that. Mediterranean diet, blah, blah, blah. But we were sitting in the north of Italy, in Alba, in Piemonte. If you ever have eaten something, but you haven't eaten a white truffle, you haven't eaten something yet. That's the most delicious thing I've ever encountered, food-wise, a white truffle. But that's beyond the point. But we're sitting in the north of Italy, and someone says, at the time that this picture comes out, this is a picture of North America, where every McDonald's is a flashlight. And someone says, that's interesting, because in the entire north of Italy, there is only, at the time, one McDonald's. And my point is, how can I prove that I let you live longer because of the diet, or because I don't send you two? You see my point, eh? That's something you can only solve with big data. If you start to have a huge amount where you can make a distinction between cause and correlation. And that is why this is an interesting one. It's freaky, but do me a favor. Download this one tonight, Moody's. It's an app. And you speak 2 minutes to your app, and after 2 minutes, it tells you in which emotional state you are. Angry, happy, expecting for blah, 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 blah. It's a single isolated data point. But talking about isolation, to this audience, I don't have to tell that, but each time I tell it, people are shocked. This is the biggest epidemic which comes to our lives. It's being lonely, being isolated. It's mainly hitting people in between 17, 18, and 28, which are fantastic in communicating with a smartphone, but have a very hard time to say, well, I'm Koen. Who are you? Where do you go? And starting to tackle these kind of things allows us to combine things out of the real world and to anticipate things. Who is using Instagram in this audience? You know what Instagram is, It's a social service, kind of, where I send a picture and you put a layer, a filter on top of that. We have data from 4,000 Instagram users, which used to use orange and reddish as a filter. And within 2 months, moved to using gray and blue as a filter. And 2 months later are depressed. It's not surprising. Orange and red is happiness. Gray and blue is cold. It's a single isolated data point. But combining these data points, I start to be able to think about very exciting things. Can I even aim to maybe prevent things like depression and prevent things like burnouts? Let me give you one example. If I think about burnouts, if I tell your company the next burnout will hit a lady with a son of 70 years old, are you then saying, sure, we know? Are you then saying, huh? Or are you saying, interesting, let's try to find out? Let me explain. I haven't met so many men who use the words, I have a work-life balance in one go. I have met quite a number of women who use them, who can use them in one go. If you look to that, they are beautiful for themselves. They take care for the family, they are fantastic at their job, and they have a fantastic husband at home who is in a retail shop and calls her, what do I have to buy? She has to make the decision. He's cooking at home, but calls you, what do I have to cook? And then you get a 17-year-old son. Daughter is okay, independent, son, who has to decide what he has to study next year when he goes to high school. Maybe that's the signal drip which makes it the step too much. I don't know that, but I have a number of ideas on that. Are you willing to combine in an open fashion, think batteries, data from your company with all the companies here that we can start to mine eventually and predict and anticipate that for sure from now on, never ever a lady with a son of 70-year-old will get a burnout. I hope you start to see where the circle starts to close. By the way, what you've just seen, I'm sorry, I cannot go back, Woobot. You can download it as well. If I have to make an appointment with Psy in Belgium, 6 weeks at the least before I even find one. This is my Psy, the one you just seen, Woobot. He's 24/7 with me. I don't know whether it's he or she, but he's with me. Trained like a real Psy. If I have a question, I ask, well, him. And now and then he sends me to a real Psy. That gives me fantastic comfort. It's a companion living with me all the time. So where will that bring us? Because on one hand you might say, well, the good news is if we can be 24/7 with me as a patient, you will be in time and you prevent me from getting sick. And that's a pretty cool way to bring delight. Because the biggest delight in sick care is that I get sick. If you can remove that friction, it would be pretty cool. But I also hear you think, whoa, that's a complex sell. Because how will we deal with this? How will we deal, and this is Banksy again, with privacy? And all this data. Yeah? Believe me, that's the easy part. Digital and privacy seems to be linked. If we're going to be able to discuss, can my child still be handicapped? You should have known this. That's the ethical and the moral question. These are even way more profound. Yeah? But this one, the privacy thing. So let me ask you on how to deal with that. Who's willing to tell me where he or she will be Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock? That's not a lot. Yeah, the majority of you thinks, Mr. Kas, none of your business. Yeah? Okay. Who has been to Disneyland recently, the last 2 years? To Disneyland in the States? Okay. Before you go to Disneyland, you get this box sent home, the one at the right. It's a box with magic bands. It contains a band with your name, the name of your partner, the name of your kids. And the first thing you do when you start wearing it is you enter in the park and basically you get in. That's the product, wireless payments. But you know what I hate when I go to Disneyland? That's waiting 45 minutes with my children in front of Avatar. Not nice. 2 minutes before 3, the band tells me, Koen, there is no line in front of Avatar. That's a cool experience. And basically, my wife got flowers when we came there, and that's not something I expected from Disney to do, selling flowers. But that's a delightful thing I will never, ever forget. So that future, where you start to share part of your data in return for more, that is really what will bring healthcare forward. And that is based, if I may, on one last thing, on this one. This is the key in order to innovate properly. It's trust. And the last thing I'm going to tell, I'm sorry that's a little bit running over time. What is the biggest hotel company on the planet? It's a website now. It's Airbnb. This guy is going to sleep in my bed tonight and has the keys of my apartment. That's based on trust. Yeah? This is how the website looks like, and this is San Francisco. Look, blue, hotels in San Francisco. Red, Airbnbs in San Francisco. All of a sudden, a website brings hospitality to an entire city. And that's going to bring me to my very, very, very last point to send you home. All the things you know about me are basically stored in one box. I can store them in a box. Who I am, where I live, when I live, what I do. Yeah? And all these things together, they define who I am. In 2018, before you make something new, you don't make something new. You first make a digital copy of what you plan to make. So imagine you want to make a car. You have so many data from building a car yesterday that you can digitally copy the car virtually, tweak the car till it gets better, and then you make it. I think you know what my next slide is going to show. In 2018, we're ready to start making our own personal digital twins. And I have the honor to run the most aspirational European project we ever applied for in Europe to make, by 2030, avatars for every European, and I hope where the avatar will be trained with all the knowledge I need to know to be a doctor who has the knowledge and needs the knowledge to prevent the 5 most relevant chronic diseases. And this way, we hope back to go to this movie, Big Hero 6, about 5 friends which get to know a 6th one, a big marshmallow inflatable doctor who lives in my house and sometimes appears and guides me as a personal assistant in a future where we have been in very old China, where basically my doctor got paid as long as I remained healthy. And as a delight factor, I don't think this can be topped. So I really believe that all companies in every branch at some point in time will collude into healthcare. And I'm going to send you home with one last thing. The first things I think you've heard. What do you have to do to make your company future-proof? Sure, trust, curiosity, experimentation, sharing. Yes, you heard that. Try to think about your client and his copy. How can you make your client his ultimate personal assistant? Yeah? And for that, I think, and that's maybe something you haven't heard, I would advise you to kill the idea of return on investment. Google is 20 years old. When the company was 1 year old, the 2 founders wanted to sell the company to Yahoo for $1 million. And Yahoo said, we're not going to do that. A website which searches websites, it's not going to scale. Who's stupid in this story? Well, Yahoo. But the founders of Google as well. They didn't realize, after being 1 year on the market, what the return on investment could be. So kill that idea. But the real last thing I'm going to send you home is this. You will get, from Housemark, an envelope with 5, not euro, pounds in it. And I ask you to maximize that amount of money by next week on Monday. And the person who has made the most money out of the 5 gets a free trip to the Bahamas. Paid by. What do you do? What do you do? Yeah. Some people say, I will play Euro Millions. Pound Millions. Does it exist, Pound Millions? You know Euro Millions, eh? A very small chance, but if I win, I get the Bahama trip as well. The majority of you will buy 2 liters of Coca-Cola. And your children will divide it in small cups, and you sell the cups, and you make more money. That's how you run a business. But I would advise, burn the 5 pounds. Throw it away. Take a guitar. Go to the tube. Start playing 50 minutes of music, and in 50 minutes you have 50 pounds gathered. It's starting from a white page. And with that, I'm going to send you home. How will you delight someone today, tomorrow, and the day thereafter? Thank you.